I'm familiar with these crimes.
Yeah, likewise.
And still, the amount of times I had to write about necrophilia in the script.
There are so few actual serial killers that participate in that particular thing, but Ed Kemper sure does a lot of it.
Especially to this extent.
Yeah,
Like, it's every time.
So I guess consider this your warning, guys.
Yeah. It's going to be talked about a lot.
It's going to get real gruesome, real nasty, so just brace your little ears and eyeballs.
Yep.
That being said, hello everyone, I'm Charlotte.
And I'm Dina. Welcome to the Grim Curriculum.
We are back to Ed Kemper for part 2 of this series. Last week we covered his early life as well as the crimes committed by him at only 15 years old and how he was able to trick psychologists into expunging his record as a youth.
Today we will be talking about his adult life along with the crimes that earned him the nickname the Co-Ed Killer.
And a funny little thing about that is when I was putting up part 1 of Ed Kemper last week, YouTube demonetized it when I put Co-Ed Killer in the title, so I had to remove it, unfortunately.
I saw that.
Yeah, so for anyone out there that noticed, that is why I had to change the title. YouTube did not like that.
They don't like what we talk about.
So like we mentioned last week, Ed went back to live with his mother, Clarnell, after his time at the Atascadero State Hospital. This was something his psychologist advised strongly against. We have a clip from one of his interviews that we want to play that talks a little bit about his time after.
I got paroled to my mother. Atascadero decided that I didn't ever need to talk to her again at all. Don't give her a Christmas present. Leave her alone. She got a pound of flesh out of you. I wasn't sniveling about my mother to them. I didn't like to hear what they had to say about her. She went through 3 husbands like a hot knife through butter. 4 months after I was out, I was back into the fantasy bag. My first date was an absolute disaster. It wasn't her fault. And I didn't blame her even then. I'm saying it was a terrible tragedy, but boy, she didn't ever talk to me again. It was awful. It wasn't sexual or grabbing at her. I was just such a dork, taking her to a John Wayne movie and Denny's. It's terrible. I'd never been on a date. At 16, that was cool, I'd never been on a date, I was locked up since I was 15. But I can't tell her that. Oh, gee, don't mind me. She kind of got hung up on my looks or whatever. She's a gorgeous young lady. Pure class. And she saw something there that I guess wasn't there. And boy, she found out quick.
He's so well-spoken.
I hate it.
Me too, because it kind of just, and the way he has this self-awareness about a situation too, and he's like, oh man, like, I was such a dork, like, oh, it wasn't her fault that I was such an idiot kind of thing. And I, even myself, and you guys watching on Patreon, I found myself smiling.
He is such a complicated human being, and watching more and more interviews with him, I can see how he fooled so many people because he is very amicable.
Yes, that's the thing.
He's smart.
Yeah.
And he's kind of funny.
Yes. And he's this big giant of a man.
Yeah.
Combined with this sort of, he clearly has a slight sense of humor. You can't deny it. You can see how he, foiled all these psychiatrists and everything.
I think with serial killers, I often think about specifically someone we're going to talk about in the future, Richard Chase.
Oh, yeah.
Who is just this
goblin of a human being.
This maniac who's crazy. And it's what you would expect someone who does things like this to be like. And then you see Ed and it's confusing.
100%. So Clarnell's time away from Ed had served her well, despite the fact that she had gotten married and divorced once again on the grounds of mental cruelty. Clarnell held a job as an administrative assistant on campus at the University of California, Santa Cruz.
As soon as Ed arrived, things began to unravel once again. Neighbors would report hearing screaming matches between the two of them, and it seems like Clarnell went back to berating him on a regular basis.
In later interviews, Ed would say that they would fight over the most trivial of things, including how often he got his teeth cleaned. She was like, yeah, I think you should go to the dentist. And he was no, Mom, leave it alone. And she was like, go to the fucking dentist. Yeah. And it would just blow up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Wild.
Ed attempted to obtain his dream job of being a police officer, but was deemed to be too tall. Thank goodness.
Yeah, we said it last episode as well. I can't imagine what kind of power trip would have happened if he found himself in the position of a police officer.
Yeah.
That could have been, well, I mean, it was horrific anyway, but it could have been a lot worse, I feel. To make himself feel better, Ed purchased himself a motorcycle. He also spent the majority of his free time at a bar called the Jury Room. It was a place where police officers often hung out together. He won them over with his knowledge of guns and ammunition, and Ed would often sit with them and engage in conversation. They even had a nickname for him, Big Ed.
To them, he was what they called a cop groupie. Ed had no visible record and seemed like an innocent guy who just enjoyed their stories and could hold a good conversation.
He worked various jobs as a laborer and finally settled into a position with the Division of Highways. This allowed him to earn more and therefore move out of Clarnell's home with a roommate.
Despite the distance between the two, she still targeted him and often called him to express her displeasure with him as a son.
So even after he's like, okay, bye, I'm moving out, she's like, I think not, ring, ring.
She would show up at his house.
Yes. Unannounced.
Yeah, unannounced, and just complain about him.
You know what? Poor Ed, but also fuck Ed at the same time. They're all just so horribly dysfunctional.
Oh, they're terrible. They should have had nothing to do with each other.
No. Shortly after purchasing his motorcycle, he was in a minor accident. And soon after that, he was hit by a car while riding, leaving his arm badly injured. As a result, Ed received $15,000 in a civil suit against the driver, and he used some of that money to purchase a car that looked similar to an unmarked police vehicle.
He even had it outfitted with a radio transmitter, microphone, and large antenna.
And just to clear it up too, $15,000, I mean, for some people, a life-changing amount of money. But in those days, it was closer to something like $70,000.
Oh, yeah, he got a good chunk of change for this.
Yeah, absolutely. His injury left him unable to work for a period of time, which left him feeling depressed and angry. He soon began having dark sexual fantasies. Whenever he drove around, he noticed a large number of young women hitchhiking in the area. It was quite normal for the time, especially considering the high population of students and travelers.
With that, Ed saw opportunity. He began carrying the tools he needed to eventually carry out his darkest desires, including a knife, handcuffs, and a gun.
Not only that, he also rigged the passenger door from being able to be opened from the inside. He would also often sit in his car alone and practice pulling out the gun from under the seat. So he's becoming more efficient at what he needs
he's a planner.
to do.
And the thing is, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it's a 2-door car.
Yes, it's just a little coupe kind of thing.
Exactly.
So he's already rigged the other door not to open. He's put the child lock on it, essentially. Oh, that's so scary.
At first, Ed would pick up women who were small, young, and pretty and drop them off safely at their destination.
But he used this time to learn how to engage in small talk and make them trust him. Like we mentioned before, despite his large size, Ed had the ability to come across as a kind and affable guy.
When he had a girl in the car, he would think about all of the horrible things he wanted to do to her. But he wasn't ready to act out his fantasies just yet.
He did this for more than a year before finally doing what he sought out to do.
On May 7th, 1972, Ed saw Marianne Pesky and Anita Lucchesa while he was out driving. The two were students at Fresno State College and were looking for a ride to Stanford University. They would never make it there.
In interviews, he would describe Mary as haughty, stuck up, not beautiful, not ugly, and distant. This is likely because she saw the red flags rather quickly. Marianne originally didn't want to get into the car. She had hitchhiked in the past and didn't like that Ed had a 2-door car, which would make escape difficult if things went wrong. Oh, so she clocked him pretty damn quick. Oh, God.
Sadly, Anita was fairly new to the whole practice and saw no issue. She convinced her friend to get in the car with her. Ed told them he was in a hurry and they had to decide quickly, so they went with him. So they're kind of arguing about, like, should we do it, should we not? And he's like, listen, I'm in a hurry. Like, do you want the ride or not?
And once that sense of urgency and that pressure, it's harder for someone to say no. So be aware of that, guys. He knew the area well, and he was able to take them in the wrong direction without them realizing it. About an hour into the drive, he pulled out a gun from under the seat and drove them to a secluded area. He handcuffed Marianne in the backseat first.
Ed would later say that sometime during this, he accidentally grazed her breast and would claim that this was something that left him feeling very uncomfortable and embarrassed.
He even, apologized to her
Yeah.
when he did it, which is wild considering what he ends up doing to the both of them.
He then told the girls he was now in charge.
He took Anita out of the car and locked her in the trunk. Ed then turned his attention back to Marianne. Once again, he justified this as an act of sympathy, saying that he didn't want Anita to see what he was about to do to her friend.
He put a plastic bag over Marianne's head and wrapped a bathrobe belt around her neck and attempted to suffocate her. The belt broke and she was able to bite through the bag.
We're going to play an interview with Ed now where he talks about what happens next here.
Knife out. I still had the gun in my pants. I stabbed her. She didn't fall dead. You're supposed to fall dead. You're supposed to go, oh, and fall dead. I've seen it in all the movies, right? Doesn't work that way. When you stab someone, they leak to death. They lose blood pressure, and you stab them more and more and more. You complicate it many times by where you're hitting, the pain you're causing, and the aggravation of the person involved, plus whether or not they leak a little faster. It wasn't working worth the damn. I stabbed her all over her back, and she even turned around. I stabbed her in the side and the stomach once. Why? As she turned around, I could have stabbed her through the heart. But her breasts were there. And that actually deflected me. I couldn't see stabbing a young woman in her breast. That's embarrassing. I didn't say that to them back then, I don't think. I may have. But that's humiliating to admit that I was that affected by her presence. I stabbed her in the belly. It had to hurt worse. I didn't do it to make it hurt. I was trying to shut her up. And she ended up getting her throat cut. And I learned the term ear to ear, what that meant, because that's what it meant.
I hate him so much.
I know.
The way he speaks so matter-of-factly about it. It's like he must be removed from it. Do you know what I mean? He's talking about it like he's a coroner. He's not talking about it like he perpetrated it.
He has this very well rehearsed because he's told these stories so many times.
Yes.
There's one interview that I watched. It is a newer interview.
Okay.
Where he's telling one of his stories and the interviewer kind of interrupts him.
Mm-hmm.
And he says something like, hold on, you're ruining the bit.
Oh my God. So it's like a script that he's doing. And it's like, whoa, you can't go off script. Let me talk here.
Let me finish.
Oh my God. If you're wondering why he didn't use the gun that he had with him, like he said, he had it stuffed in his pants, he was so excited about the whole thing that he forgot he had the gun at all with him. Disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
God damn.
After this, he went over to kill Anita. He opened up the trunk and she asked him what he had done with her friend. Ed lied and said that she wouldn't do what he said, so he broke her nose. He told Anita that she needed to get out of the trunk to help her.
As she got out, he took out a knife that he had hidden in the trunk. He stabbed her in the throat, eyes, and forearm until she lost consciousness and died. His attack on her was so brutal that the force threw her body up against the car.
She was teeny. They're all tiny.
Of course, they're young women. And the thing is, had he used the gun on Mary, Anita might have panicked because she would have heard it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it didn't really change anything in the end.
Ed then drove towards his home with the bodies in the trunk of his car. At first, he panicked because he couldn't find his keys, so he ran from the car. As he was running, the gun in his pants fell out and tripped him. So he took a moment, checked his pockets, and found the key.
I'm glad we know this. I'm glad he told this in a way because it's cathartic to see that as much as we've just talked about him being intelligent and charming, it's like you're also a bumbling fucking idiot as well. Shockingly enough, he actually got stopped by police because of a broken taillight. His time at the jury room had taught him how to talk to cops, and he was let go with a warning. This man has 2 bodies in the trunk of his car with a broken taillight. How close was the officer to those 2 girls? Oh my God.
Ed would later say that he was incredibly excited when the cop pulled him over and that the feeling escalated when he was let go. He claimed that he was fully prepared to kill the police officer.
When he got home, he carried the bodies to his apartment. His roommate was out of town and none the wiser about what kind of monster he was sharing this home with.
Ed dissected the bodies and took photos. He then beheaded them and had sex with their remains. He buried Mary Ann and would later take the police to where her body was. As for Anita, her remains were never found.
We also have another interview that we're going to play where he talks about this.
That I was losing a grasp on something that was too violent to keep inside forever. As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart. I say, wow, this is insane. And then I told myself, no, it isn't. You're saying that. And that makes it not insane. I said, I'm sane, and I'm looking at a severed, and I said, well, wait a minute. I see old paintings and drawings of Viking heroes talking to severed heads and taking them to parties, old enemies in leather bags. Part of our heritage. This is me back then in 1972 and 73. Unable to live with the fact that I just stabbed to death and cut the throat of an innocent young woman. Innocent in the sense that she did not plan on that happening. She didn't do anything specifically for that to happen to her. Yet she was a very active participant in her own death. And in my memory of that, she was 19 years old, and her roommate in the trunk who died right after that was 18. I didn't go hog wild and totally limp. What I'm saying is I found myself doing things in an attempt to make things fit together inside. I was doing sexual probings and things. I mean, in the sense of striking out and reaching out and grabbing and pulling to me, but appalled at the sense that it wasn't working. That isn't the way it's supposed to be. It isn't the way I want it. See what I'm saying? And yet during that time, I become engaged to someone who's young and is beautiful and very much the same advantages and very much the same upbringing.
And then again, he's like justifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But then he's self-aware enough that he explains his way through it in a way that it cannot be justified.
Oh, yeah. Because that's the thing. At the end of the day, he's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And he is such a level of crazy that he doesn't necessarily think that his actions are. Because he says, I thought I was crazy, but you're not, because you realize that what you're doing is crazy.
Yeah. It's like saying, like, oh, if you have the capacity to realize you're insane, then you can't be insane.
Yeah.
Awful. He kept the girls' heads for a few more days and continued to engage in sexual activity with them. He called this humiliating the corpse. He then threw their heads into a ravine.
Ed would admit to cannibalizing his victims, but later recanted the statements, saying that it was an attempt to get the insanity defense.
It would not shock me at all.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Absolutely not. If he's engaging in all of this other horrific stuff, why not cannibalism?
Mm-hmm.
My only question is with that is if it is true and if he did engage in cannibalism, why recant that but nothing else? That's my only thought with that.
I think for him, Ted Bundy did it too.
That's true.
Where later he said that he did it, and then he was like, no, because that's his line. That's his line in the sand that he won't cross.
Yeah, that's very true. Their families both went on to file reports about missing persons, but unfortunately, the police didn't investigate either case much. They assumed that the girls had run off with a boyfriend and would be found soon.
No one suspected Ed in any way. This allowed him to continue to prowl the streets for his next victim. He continued to pick people up and let them go, and chose his victims at random. By now, the public knew about the murder of Mary Ann. Her body had been found. He would even ask women while they were in his car about what they thought of her death, going as far as asking what they thought the guy would be like and then altering his behavior to make himself more inconspicuous.
Holy cow. He's woven his way into the world that he's living in, essentially. And so he's getting his information directly from the source.
He's getting it from the people he's picking up.
Yeah.
He's also still going to the jury room where they're talking about what's going
cops?
on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he's hearing about his crimes from all different walks of life, and he loves it.
I don't want to give him too much credit, but in this particular case, he really is the wolf in sheep's clothing.
Oh,
here.
yes.
He would say that if they did bring up the murder, he would feel embarrassed and not kill them because of it. I can't wrap my head around that. I'm not sure where the logic is there.
There was a pattern, though. It seems that all of his murders happened after huge fights with Clarnell.
On September 14th, he found 15-year-old Aiko Ku as she was on her way to dance practice. She missed her bus and decided to try and hitchhike there.
This time, he didn't wait to get to a secluded area. He pulled the gun out while they were on the main road. He told her that he was going to kill himself and that he wanted someone to watch it happen. He warned her that if she signaled to anyone, he would kill her too.
At one point, he got out of the car and locked himself out with the gun in the vehicle. Aiko was terrified and she didn't think to grab it, and she let him back in. He then drove her to the mountains. Ed attempted to suffocate her by placing his fingers in her nostrils. She fought him off and he strangled her with her scarf.
When she was dead, he had sex with her body.
He placed her corpse in the trunk and went to take her to his house. But he did stop for a beer before doing this. Ed even opened the trunk in the parking lot to admire what he had done before walking into the bar. The balls on this motherfucker.
After he brought her home, Ed cut off Aiko's head and hands and had sex with her corpse again. The next morning, he buried her body in one location and hands in another. He kept her head in a bag and drove to a court-mandated appointment with a psychiatrist.
During this appointment, it was reported that Ed was doing great and was no danger to himself or others.
He saw 2 different psychiatrists that day, and one of them reported, just like the guy before that we talked
Yep.
about in episode 1, where if he hadn't had any knowledge of this person, he would think this was a very well-adjusted guy, that it was right to expunge his record, that he's doing great, he's not going to hurt anybody, and that they are just doing an awesome job with him.
And I mean, now having being reminded of how he speaks,
Mhm.
I'm not forgiving them completely.
No.
But I can see again why they were convinced, because the way Ed speaks in these interviews, it's like he is telling someone else's story.
Yes.
That's how far removed he sounds from it. It's bizarre.
He has her head in a bag with him.
At his psychiatrist appointment. And they are like, yeah, you're good, Ed.
You're
No
doing great, Eddie.
problemo, homie.
Yeah.
Get out there, bud. Oh my God. After he killed Aiko, Ed moved back in with Clarnell. I can't imagine anyone thought that was a good idea this
No.
time either.
It's never a good idea. He bought a .22 pistol in January of the following year. On February 5th, 1973, Ed picked up Cyndia Shaw, also known as Cindy. He drove her to a small town and stopped on a secluded road. He shot her and put her body in the trunk.
He then took her to the home that he now shared with his mother. He had a hard time getting her body up the stairs, and Clarnell came home as he was hiding her body in his closet. He acted like nothing was wrong, and Clarnell was none the wiser.
After they were done talking, he went back to his room and removed the bullet from her skull. Ed had learned from the cops at the jury room that doing this could prevent him from being caught.
He's really had the best teachers he possibly could have had, because he was learning from all the sex offenders and pedophiles that he was with at the state hospital. He's now learning from the other side of law enforcement, and he's learning from his victim pool.
Yeah.
He's just getting better at what he does. The following day, he engaged in sexual activities with the corpse and then dissected Cindy in the shower. He bagged the pieces of her body and threw it off of a cliff. Once again, he kept her head for several days and regularly had sex with it.
He then buried the head right outside of his window. Ed would later say that he would sit in bed and romantically talk to her head. He called it a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship.
So remember that when you're thinking about how sane he sounds, he's not sane.
No.
Less than 2 days later, parts of Cindy's body were found. She was identified, and the press finally began to panic. There were multiple serial killers in the area at the time, and it was clear that people were in grave danger. Remember, guys, this is California in the 70s.
Warnings were issued to the public about not accepting rides from strangers. Local universities issued bus services to students to allow them to travel safely.
Ed found his way around this by using a UC Santa Cruz parking sticker for his car that he got from Mummy Clarnell. This helped add up his trustworthy demeanor and allowed him to continue to pick up young women.
On February 5th, Ed had an incredibly violent fight with his mother. He drove to the campus where she worked and picked up Rosalind Thorpe, who had just left class. The two engaged in conversations as they drove, and soon after, he saw another hitchhiker, Allison Liu.
Allison saw that he already had someone in the car with him and felt safe. This time, Ed didn't even stop the car. He pointed out of the window and said that there was a lovely view. When Rosalind looked out the window, he pulled out his gun and shot her, killing her immediately.
This was all while he was still on campus. Ed would later say that he drove past a security post, but that the men working recognized him and waved him through without checking his vehicle. In another version of the story, he said he was stopped, but told the guard that the two women had had too much to drink and he was driving them home.
Ed then turned around and fired at Alice in the back seat several times. He left her bleeding in the car, drove to a secluded area, and shot her again, killing her.
He took the bodies home. Clarnell was there, so he had to wait before he brought them inside. Ed would say that he was so excited that he took his knife and cut off their heads while they were still in the trunk.
He was parked outside of Clarnell's home in the middle of the day and at full risk of being seen. He once again had sex with their heads.
Ed dumped the bodies in 2 separate locations where they would be found 9 days later.
These would be his final co-ed killings, but Ed would ultimately claim 2 more lives before his killing spree was finally over.
And that's where we'll pick back up next week with the conclusion of our Ed Kemper series.
We warned you guys. Lots of necrophilia. I wish there wasn't.
Me too.
I really wish there wasn't.
It's interesting is probably a terrible word to use, but something that I find interesting is he talks about, grazing the breast and all of that.
Yes, and how it embarrassed him.
He only would have sex with his victims after they were dead.
That's very true. So what does that say about him?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure psychologists out there can unpack that for us.
Yeah.
Big time. All that being said, we are at the outro of the episode where we love to give a big shout out to the folks across all the social media platforms, but especially our Grim VIPs over on Patreon.
It's patreon.com/thegrimcurriculum. We have a free tier where you get early episode reveals. Paid tiers get video versions of the episode, a Discord, and all sorts of fun stuff. We want to thank in a very big way Mayhem Mudkip, Yegpla, Lisa, Nova, Kevinus Musicus, Bob, Brian, Paranoid Pop Rocks, Steven Centauri, Judy, and Atlantean Jedi.
Thank you, thank you. You are all the bee's knees, the titty city.
Yeah.
We appreciate the heck out of y'all.
Thank you all so much for listening. This has been
The Grim Curriculum.
Barilla Pasta has a Spotify playlist.
Oh.
Each playlist is the exact length of cook time for their various types of pasta.
Honestly, I need to go check this out because I literally have Barilla pasta in my pantry right now, and I'm always wondering how long I'm supposed to cook that shit.
Check it out.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Bye.